Happy Tuesday, everyone. So I thought we'd start today by taking a look at your CFAs from yesterday. So I went through, I graded everybody's. I didn't give you guys any like feedback or anything on me yet, because what I thought we would do is I want you to pull yours out that you did yesterday, and I'm gonna like redo one right here alongside while you're doing, or while you can look at yours that's already done. For the most part, you guys have this. I mean, you're doing great with it. There's a couple bonehead mistakes that some people made, and there is something though that I really want to talk about as far as when it comes to reading and following directions. So we'll get to that in a second. So what you should have right now is your sheet from yesterday. If you want to have like a pen to grade with or something, give yourself a star, happy face if you get it right. That'd be great. If you did miss something, why don't you check it wrong, and then you can go back as you have time later on today and you can rework the problem again. See if you have a question about why you missed it or why the correct answer is what it is, all right? All right, so we'll start at the top here. So this first part was just comparing decimals. So the directions say shade in the following decimals. You have 4500ths, 3700ths, 700ths, and 8000ths. I like this one because they're all hundredths. They're all the same amounts, right? Here's something that most of you did not do. Number 2, label each decimal grid. You notice beneath every one of the decimal grids that are there, there's a line. Usually when there's a line, you need to put something on it. And that was for labeling the decimal number for that particular decimal grid. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if I start, our first one is 0.45 or 4500ths. Well, on a 100 grid, you know, there's 100 blocks there. So we know every column has 10 in it, so there's 10, 20, 30, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my 45, right? And we already talked about it. You don't have to be like Joe Artist and get everything perfect. That's good enough, right? Now, the part that more than half of you missed was this number 2 part, labeling the grid. Well, of course I can tell what it is by counting them up, but I shouldn't because your directions said to label it. So in order to get this one fully correct, that had to have the label on it, okay? If you did both those things, smiley face, smiley face. If you didn't do this, count it wrong. If you got this right, smiley face there. Give yourself credit for what you got right, okay? Okay, second one was 3700ths. So every column is 10, 20, there's 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which leaves 3 left over before I get to my next 10, which is right. Go back in and just kind of darken it a little bit so I know where we're at, and label my grid. Again, smiley face if you got both things right. Smiley, check mark if you didn't. Check mark if you missed them both, okay? All right, 700ths. Now, there's 100 of them on here. How many do you need colored in? 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's it, okay? So your chart should look just like that, and you should label it 700ths, smiley, 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 check, check, check. You know the drill. All right, last one. 8000ths. Well, that means on a 100 grid, I need 80 of them colored in. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. So that means I should have 20 left over because 80 plus 20 is 100, right? So just go in, kind of shade these in so we know where we're starting, where we're stopping, and label your grid. Smiley, 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 check, 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 okay? Now, just because you didn't label these ones on the bottom of your grid doesn't mean you necessarily don't know how to do the skill. You just didn't read and follow directions, all right? So the important part is knowing how many of these blocks to color in, all right? That's your key part. Now, speaking of reading and following directions, here's where some of you are gonna smack yourself silly. Put the decimals in order from greatest to least. Greatest is the biggest. Least should be the last. Almost every single one of you did least to greatest because that's what most problems in math have you do. They go from least to greatest. This one, if you didn't read, you're going to have 4 check marks here for getting this wrong. Now, if you did put them in greatest to least order, that's awesome. You read and followed the directions. If you didn't, again, Here's some good news in all of it. If you did least to greatest and did them all in the right order, at least you got them ordered correctly. You just didn't follow the directions, all right? So if I'm gonna look at my numbers that I have here, I've got, let's see, 0.45, I'm gonna line them up over here. 0.37. Remember last week I told you we should always line everybody up on the decimal point, so all my place value columns are the same. And it's just like when we're doing alphabetical order for words, I'm gonna look at my numbers here, 4308, all right? Now this time I'm not looking for the least, I'm looking for the greatest. So of those numbers, which is the biggest? Well, 8 is the biggest, so that one's gonna come first. So I'm gonna come over here, my paper's not behaving on me, and I'm gonna put 0.80. Then I'm gonna go back over here and I'm gonna cross off 0.80. All right, who's the next biggest? 4, 3, or 0? Well, 0.45 is gonna come next. Now I'm with 0.3 or 0.0. Well, 0.37 is gonna come next. Cross it off. And my smallest one is gonna be my 0.07, okay? So that's what the top of your CFA should look like to get full credit on the top, okay? All right, here's the bottom. What we're doing now is we're just working on converting fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions and putting those decimals on a number line. So the coolest thing of all, when you are writing fractions and decimals, if you say it, you can write it. So 2/10. How do you write 2/10? Well, tenths is one number after the decimal, so there's your answer, 0.2. 6/100. Now, hundredths, you guys already know, I need two numbers after the decimal. So in order to make it say 6/100, it's 0.06. Now, what some of you did, you put 0.6. 0.6 says 6/10. That doesn't say 6/100. Then some people are like, oh, well, I know I need two numbers after the decimal, so I'm going to put 0.60. Well, that doesn't say 6/100. How many hundredths is that? That's 60/100. So neither of those options that I just did are the right way to do it. 0.06 is 6/100, okay? 45/100, I like this one because it's just 0.45. So smiley, check, however you did on those. Now, the second row says write the decimal in equivalent fraction form. So in this one, I took the fractions and made the decimals. Now I got the decimals, I need to make the fractions. I don't know what some of you are doing on this part because some of you didn't even write fractions here. You wrote decimals again. So all you're doing is flip-flopping. Fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions. And in order to do that, just say what it says. 0.92, that's 92/100. Well, how do you write 92/100 as a fraction? 92/100. All right, this one, some of you are going to be like, come on. All right, 0.8, how do you say it? 8/10. And that's what you write. Now, some of you put this number, 80/100. And yes, 8/10 and 80/100 are the exact same thing. They're the same thing. If I colored in 10 bars up here, or I colored in 81 bars up here, all right? I have the same number, but this is asking you to write 8/10. Only one of these two fractions is 8/10, and it's this one right here. 80/100 is not 8/10. So when they're asking you for something in particular, make sure you're putting the right one down, okay? Now, this one we hadn't really talked about before, but I was really proud of those of you that got this one right. So there's actually a couple of ways to do this, right? So first off, cover up the whole number, right? What are you left with? 7/100. So how do you write 7/100? Well, it's 7/100, right? 7/100. Now, a whole number, which is on this side of the decimal, in order to get this right, you could either write this as 3 and 700, so it looks like that. Or a couple of you were like, well, every whole number is 100. Three whole numbers got to be 300, right? Because 100, 200, 300. And 300 plus 7 is 307. I even had some of you that were so ingeniously smart, you wrote 307/100. And that is correct as well. So you could either have written your answer as a mixed number, that has a whole number and a fraction, or you could have written it as an improper fraction. Either way would be perfectly fine, okay? Now, if you missed this one, I had some people that did, I don't know, I saw this, 37 hundredths. Is 37 hundredths the same thing as 3 and 7 hundredths? No. I mean, if you take the time to read what you wrote, you'll be able to see if your decimals and fractions are correct just by saying them and thinking about them, okay? So this one, we'll do some more practice on this one, so I'm not super concerned if you missed that one, but I threw that one at you just to see how you could reason that one out, all right? Okay. Down below here, number lines. So I've got my 0 to 1, so that means these 10 spots in between are all going to be tenths, right? So my first number on my number line I need to put in is 6 tenths. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my 6 tenths is going to go right here. I like what some of you did. You just drew the line right over to that, right? What I did when I did mine, I just wrote the number above it. Either way is fine. Okay. After that, I've got 9 tenths. So this is 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, 9 tenths. So 9 tenths is going to go right there. Okay. Now, 75 hundredths. Well, when we worked with number lines last week, we know that hundredths live in between the tenths. So 75 is going to live between what 2 tenths? Well, here's 6, which is really 60 hundredths. Here's 7 tenths, which is 7 hundredths. Here's 8 tenths, which is 80 hundredths. So 75 is got to be right in between 0.7 and 0.8. So 0.75 or 75 hundredths is going to live right there. There's a few of you that missed that one, okay? Don't forget, if I have hundredths, that's in between the tenths. The tenths are going to live right on the lines if I'm breaking a whole number up into 10 parts. Okay, the last two, 1 and 8 tenths and 1 and 25 hundredths. Well, obviously, those numbers are bigger than 1, but they're less than 2. They don't go beyond 2 because none of your whole numbers say 2. So they all have to live right inside of here. So if I have 1 and 8 tenths, so just count. 1 tenth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1 and 8 tenths is going to go right there, because it's 1 whole and 8 more tenths. And then now I'm back to hundredths again. So I've got to think in between my tenths. So that's 1 and 1 tenth, 1 and 2 tenths, 1 and 3 tenths, 1 and 4 tenths. Where's 1 and 25 hundredths? Well, this is the same as saying 1.20 and 1.30, and 1.25 is going to be halfway in between there. So that's where your 1.25 lives, okay? So you got your 0.6, 0.75, 0.9 right here, 1.25, and 1.8 all the way out here, okay? Now, what I really want you guys to do with this is think about, how did you do? I know how you did, but what you need to kind of step back now that you have the right answers and say, now I kind of understand a little bit better, or you know what, I got all these, I got them all right, and I'm good to go on this, okay? Now, I know this took a big chunk of our time this morning just to go over these CFAs together, but I thought it was really important to lead us into our lesson for today. So if you have other questions, give yourself a chance to go through it again, watch the video again. If you're still not sure why you missed something, send me an email, let me know about it, and we can talk about it, okay? All right, I'm going to shut this off, get it uploaded, and be back with your lesson for today.